Early in the year, I was like, man, I think I can automate all kinds of things, and the language of the future is going to be English. My AI opinions seem to change every couple of weeks, just as things change.
Welcome to the Hallway Track. I'm Chris Benoit. This week I'm talking with Matt Brown, who's about to step in as the CTO of Opendate here in Indianapolis. Matt's career is a tour of the whole spectrum. He's gone from 50-person startups to Salesforce, where he's one of 10,000 or so engineers, it seems like. And now he's heading back to a small team on purpose. We get into what actually changes as you move between org sizes, how influence and political capital work in inverse proportion to headcount, why constraints make you a better engineer, not a more limited one, and what your job even becomes once the machine is writing the code. If you've spent your career bouncing between scrappy startups and giant orgs, or you're about to make that jump in either direction, this one's for you. Hi, Matt. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Chris. How about yourself?
Not too shabby. You and I know each other for quite some time now, but why don't you let everybody else know who you are and what you do and all that fun sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm Matt Brown. I am about to start here in the next couple of weeks as the CTO of Opendate. Yeah, a local Indianapolis startup doing venue, ticketing, marketing, all of the things for small independent venues. So I'll be starting there in a couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, that's very exciting. Actually, I know the folks over at Opendate pretty well. I might talk to Adam a little bit later.
Yeah, I've just gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really impressed with him and what he's built over there. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great
yeah.
news. That's been an update since last time we talked.
Oh, yeah. That's hot off the presses. So,
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah.
Cool. But yeah, this is just like one step. Like I mentioned, we know each other a little bit. We're practically neighbors. Like I think you were on the school board where my kids go to school at one point.
Yeah.
So, but you've bounced around like quite a bit, just like I have. You talk a little bit about other places you've worked and like what those sort of environments might look like.
Yeah, I've been in the indie tech community for quite some time. Started doing some just small engineering jobs, and then I helped start and found a local company, Agua Digital, that grew to maybe 50 or so folks and was then acquired by ExactTarget, and was there for about 18 months before they got acquired by Salesforce. So I went from a company of 50 to a company of, I don't know, approximately 9 billion people. Like, it was so big by comparison. And then I stayed there for a little while, and I started another startup called, well, we called it Quantify, got a cease and desist, and then it turned into Pattern 89. Those are always fun things.
Yeah.
I started that from ground zero and grew up to about 10 or so employees. And then my last two stints were at Lessonly. I have a very common theme here, right? At Lessonly for about 2 years, and it was acquired by a larger company called Seismic. And then from there, I went to Bloomerang and was there about 2.5 years. So I've done everything from engineer one all the way up to Salesforce. I was a senior director there. I probably had 50 to 7, I don't know. I might have had 100 people in my org at that time, but like we were one of, I don't know, 10,000 engineers, maybe more. I don't even really know then, but have been in that sort of 100 to 500 engineer capacity for the last 5 or so years, and getting back to a much smaller org, which I'm really excited about. So,
yeah. Is there anything you need to change with your approach, like when you're going between these like larger organizations down to smaller ones?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. So for me personally, I enjoy being, let's call it, more influential. I like to have a lot of more of influence in how things are going. And you have to tailor that. The larger the org, sort of the smaller the influence, or at least the comparative influence, right? Because you might be able to affect your group, but as a director at Salesforce, you're not going to change the ship because it's so big, right? You're a cog of some size, but the machine is always bigger than you. And so you have to take that into account and be aware of what you can change and what you can't. I think being aware of the norms of the place, like at the smaller place, in many ways, you can kind of set the norm and make adjustments along the way. It's much harder in the larger organization to be a part of that and to adjust working styles, even things like, if you think about deploy frequencies or any of those sort of things that go into that, like those are so much harder to shape and mold at the larger organization. And you have to be like super intentional and some ways careful in what you choose to battle because some of those battles they're not impossible to win, but they take a lot of work. To make
a
changes
lot of time and effort, and a lot of political capital. In some
Exactly,
places, too.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, that probably, if I think about those places, the amount of political capital you have, how slowly you gather it, and how mindful you have to be in spending it. Right when there's five of you, the capital between each of you is either really a lot or really small, depending how you think about it. And so you use that all the time because people are comfortable with that. But if you have different groups and you're one group or not the other in a bigger org, like it's much harder to get that other group to move along with you.
Yeah, I think even some of this is in my coaching practice. I help engineering leaders that are starting to like level up in these organizations, right? And so the difference between everybody is on a similar level or there's one tier, right? To like suddenly you have like siblings, right?
Yes.
Essentially, like you have like across an organization, you have multiple people that are at the same rank as you are, and then you have several layers above and below you, and it's like that sort of like cross communication and being able to look around corners almost and see when stuff's coming, and and then realizing, like you kind of hinted at, like you're a passenger on a cruise ship, right? And so it's like you might be able to change the menu in the food hall, but like
Exactly. But the boat's going where the boat's going.
You're going where the boat's going, man.
Yes.
But
I have a lot
like,
of problem with that as an early engineer. I'm a relatively, I don't know, I'm oblivious to titles in many ways. I like to think of it as an egalitarian approach where everybody's just another person on the team, where in some organizations that's not really true. Not all of the people have the same role, the same influence, but I kind of treated some people that way, which endeared some people to me, and probably others it didn't. So like learning that, oh, wait, the fact that their title is whatever is important. And I need to have a little deference to that was a slow, hard learned lesson.
In my case, like it's weird that I coach people on this now because like my own career, I've avoided large companies. Like the company size I've worked for has gradually gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Along to where at this point it's just me right now. So
So, like I have all the people around me that I can handle, which is just me.
It's like, sometimes not even that.
Exactly. Yes.
So, but now you're getting back into startup land, and I know the folks. Like I said, I was going to talk to Adam here soon anyway, because I know they've been doing a lot of interesting stuff with AI tooling in software engineering generally. How are you coming into this role, kind of thinking about that world?
I have spent a lot of time thinking about that lately. It's funny, just as I think the time horizons on my thoughts in this area are dramatically less than they have been over it. A lot of my opinions I've gathered are sort of slow going and mostly still hold. My AI opinions seem to change every couple of weeks, just as things change, right? Early in the year, I was like, man, I think I can automate all kinds of things, and the language of the future is going to be English because it's all about describing things to the machine so that it can do it appropriately. I still think that's mostly true. I still have some thoughts in there that are percolating around whether or not that's always going to be the truth, and what language. I can't decide whether or not it's important what language the machine uses. It seems to be better at some than others. But a couple of things lately, though, is I think people are going to start to be a little more cautious in when and where and how they use the tooling, because the subsidies are going to stop. And the cost is going to become a real thing. It's funny, right? The early promise of AI is it's going to be so much cheaper and engineering cost is going to go to zero. And now it's
that didn't happen.
Now you're like, hey, we need these cheap humans to mitigate the cost of that expensive machine.
I think it's actually been kind of funny. Like you and I both been in this career long enough to watch these cycles come and go, right? And like everyone was like, if I put on business hat for a minute, software as a service, SaaS is dead, or like something like that, because all these AI companies are doing these individual tokenized pricing sort of thing. And it's like, I've seen this happen long enough and seen this cycle go through. Where
Yeah.
it's like the incumbents are always like metered pricing.
Yes.
Right? Until
Yes.
at some point they hit the inflection point we've hit now where people are like, what do you mean I spent $40,000 right on one
Yes.
engineer blowing through this, right?
Yes,
So then
yes.
companies will say, no, what if we just pay you a certain amount per month and then we just get enough amount of stuff? And then it turns
Yes.
out that's better unit economics
Yes.
for both ends and it makes businesses more comfortable. So it's
Yeah.
like that. You're just watching the same cycles
Yes.
go over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's-
And I think that's another thing that I've come to learn is that finance matters. Like
Oh, yeah.
the finance team is super important, and they're going to drive some percentage of the decisions that you're making, and they probably should, right?
Yeah.
You create a business to make money, and you don't want to lose it, and they're the one who is tracking it, so you should
Yeah.
probably listen to them when you're starting to do things.
And that's actually one of the keys to, as you get higher in engineering leadership, is being able to connect the work engineering is doing to what
Yeah.
the business is doing.
Yes.
Right? And being able to connect technology decisions to business outcomes, right?
Yeah.
That's when you start unlocking like a whole lot of political capital, to go back to the earlier thing. Like
Yeah,
it's-
that
you get a lot
became
further.
yeah. That's one of the things that the big company, for me, became much like it highlighted for me because in the smaller company you're so focused just on trying to make the sales that the efficiency of the sale is not always the most important, right? Generally, you're searching revenue, not EBITDA, and so
Yeah.
what you're looking at changes. And then the last two places, both Bloomerang and Lessonly Seismic, were very sophisticated, really, in how they thought about software as a whole, and from very different spectrums, right? So I think when I started at Bloomerang, like average contract value was, let's say, $1,000. And at Seismic, it seemed like average contract value was $200,000. And so then you start like the way you think about CAC differs dramatically, right? So
Yeah,
like
and the
just
customer
things like
changes
that.
there, like it's and it is one of those things where you start thinking in terms of what sort of business is this, right?
Yes.
Is it product led growth or is it like sales led, right?
Yes.
And that actually, like, what you realize when you do this long enough is like that affects technology decisions,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It affects
Yes.
like staffing. If you're product led growth and somebody can just sign up for this thing in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
you might need to have people on call.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
For when they can't sign up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
in the morning for whatever
For sure.
reason.
Yeah.
If it's sales led and you're going to send them an invoice and they're going to get a whole onboarding thing and it's going to be high touch and luxury onboarding, like white glove service, it's like you don't have to invest as much time into that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, and those things like I never thought about that, but those things affect pricing, right? If I can just as a user come and give you a credit card, well, I can charge $50. But if I have to have a sales guy who has to send out an invoice and I got to talk to legal, well, I'm probably like, that's 25 grand. That's the low end of that sale, right? And so it makes a difference.
Yeah. And like I said, it makes a difference in like how, as an engineering leader, you end up like architecting the team, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know that it goes all the way to technology decisions, but it can affect a lot of like team makeup.
Oh, I think,
Like
I think it can go all the way to stack choices and like all of those kinds of things. There's another variable I would put in there, which is funding model, at least from the startup. Are you bootstrapped? Are you VC funded? Are you PE backed? Those all have ramifications in those choices as well. Are you bringing on contractors because your cost mix is not what the group wants it? Or do you bring on contractors because you're worried about long-term sustainability and it's easier to let that contractor go than like all of those things play into the complexity, and at different sizes you get a whole different view on those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's actually whenever I would start a new software engineering job or engineering leadership job, one of the first questions I'd ask founders is, why are we here? What is the ultimate goal for this company?
Yeah.
Are you going to be around for 10 years or are you trying to sell this in 2?
Yes.
Because I will make very different technical decisions in these 2 scenarios.
Right.
If I got 2 years and then this becomes somebody else's problem, I could cut a lot more corners.
Yes. Yeah.
Than if I got to live with this thing for the next 10 years.
Right.
Right.
And if you think about that, it's similar to the PLG versus the sales growth, right? You're making different choices in the same mechanism because of how long or what or why you're doing the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is one reason, one way like the the engineers I sometimes have the most difficulty like managing or working with are the very dogmatic ones of this is the right technical decision all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe not in this case.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I always appreciated the folks who are a little bit more pragmatic about it, right?
Yeah.
That could connect it to, oh, well, okay, this isn't the right thing to do all the time, but in this
Yes.
specific case, it probably works.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's the flip side of that where there are people who make no choice, like, oh, everything depends. There is no, like, I can't give you a short answer. I have to tell you the 47 caveats.
There's that too. I suppose, yes. When you get to that extreme, that becomes a problem as well.
Yeah.
Going back to new roles sort of thing, when we talked a little bit before this, we talked a little bit about like how with AI, sometimes it can actually go faster if you box it in and constrain it a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is actually really difficult to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of AI tools, because I struggle with this all the time, right? It's like I try to give it the full context of the ultimate thing we're trying to build.
Yeah.
And I tell it, but just build the first phase of this thing. And then it barfs out the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
Yes.
that's not what I wanted.
Yes. Yes.
But it even gets into, like we were talking earlier, like technology choices and that sort of thing, like giving it a smaller toolbox to sort of play around with.
Yeah. I think there's two things here, right? I think there's context and then there's constraints, right? And so it's how do you mix the two together? And I'm not sure that all of the things that are good for a person are the same things that are good for the computer. I would contend you always want to give the person more context.
Yeah.
Right, because there's lots of threads going there. You need to repeat things. Adult learners need like all of that stuff, right, in the context world. And I agree, the machine, the more context you give it, it gets confused more easily. It can't keep track of all the things. It wants to do more than what you tell it. And so then you have to give it more constraints, the more context you give it. While I think being clear on the constraints to a human is important also, but sometimes and sometimes you want people who are like maybe not oblivious, but who challenge your constraints, because there's a lot of things that come from, oh, we can't do that. The constraint is we can't do it. Then it's, well, I think we can actually. I'm doing some consulting now. And we just had an issue the other day where we were talking about this bigger feature. We were thinking it was probably an 8 to 10 week. We're going to chop it up in some bits. And hey, I think the first saleable thing is probably 8 to 10 weeks out. And I'm kind of one of those constraint checkers. And I was like, oh, really? I think you can build it in 2 weeks. You really got to reorder your thoughts and decide what the must-haves really are. I think we get in that nice to have is a must have. Right. But if I put that time constraint on you, now it actually opens up my thinking, because I know I have to shed all these other things. Whatever. In 2 weeks, I can probably sell it, but my compliance is going to be maybe a little lower. It's going to be right at the bar, not where our rest of our compliance is. Right. And so then I have new thoughts that I could do because that constraint changes my abilities.
Which was the original sort of, I think, thesis behind a lot of like Scrum and Agile sort of stuff, right? If it's running right dogmatically, there's that word again. Right? Like the 2 weeks is intended to be that constraint. It's like, what if we what can we actually get done in 2 weeks? Let's just do that. In real world, that never works that way.
It's funny how that becomes like the pattern and not the constraint. Right? It's just a named 2 week period. It's not
it's
like
an every other week check in on progress.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Where I found it work, we did like longer cycles. We were doing 8 weeks. So essentially every other month, we'd sit down with the business and we'd ask, hey, 2 months from now, what do you want to announce? And it's okay, cool. And they would bring us like Figmas or whatever was before Figma back in the day, right? And it'd land on engineering desk, and I'd sit there and gradually tear it all apart. Do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need that? Until they said, stop, no, that hurts.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. And then I look at it and go, all right, we could probably get you that in about 6 weeks. We could do other stuff along the side, like all that sort of stuff. And then we got 2 weeks at the end for you to review it, do enablement materials, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll push it live at the very end of it.
Yeah.
That constraint tended to work really well. And it works not just in engineering. If you're always operating in the same constraint, like the first couple of times we did it, we didn't know what fit inside of 6 weeks, right?
Yep.
It went long. We bled all the way through. But by the third time we did that, we knew exactly what fit in there, right?
Yeah.
It's not you're estimating, it's not in a typical engineering estimation where you're estimating each individual piece all the time and they're all different numbers. I found it really useful and more accurate to flip it around and say, does this fit in 6 weeks?
Yep.
Is this?
Yes. Yeah.
And you learn very quickly whether it's like you learn the size of the box and then you know what fits in the box. And it's a lot quicker than saying, what size box do I need? It's more like, will it fit in there?
One of the best Scrum teams I was ever a part of, we'd be doing refinement and we would refine a whole bunch of stories. And we'd be like, okay, we're ready to plan. We'd pick a couple stories out and it would be like, hey, can we do this? Yeah. Can we do more? Yeah. Okay, let's put another one in. Let's put another one in. And then then it's not, hey, we're just putting stuff in a 2-week period because we normally do 17 story points or whatever it might be, right? We were like thinking every time, do we think we can do all of this? I think I think size of team matters. It's much easier for me to estimate that for 3 engineers than it is for 8 engineers. Right. And so like, how do I get used to all of those pieces and think about, like, I really want sprints to have a goal, whether it's a 6-week or a 2-week or a 1 week, right? I want a goal, and this is the main thing we're working on. We get some other stuff great too, but this is what we're going to focus on. I think that really helps as well. Again, it's constraints in another way. We've declared what most important is, and we want to work from there.
Yeah. Some of the other constraints I found useful lots of times were like technology decisions, right? And again, they're not hard constraints. Like you pointed out, sometimes you give a constraint to an engineer and they're going to be like, no, I don't agree with that. We'll go do something else, right? So I usually had an escape hatch. Like one of the ones we had was like, when it comes to technology, these are the approved ones. If you want to adopt something else, someone else on the team has to know it, right? And this is a relatively small team. This is like 1,000 people or so. Right. So like we're not picking up some new toy language just because you think it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Like
you're right.
You got to convince somebody else on the team that this is a good idea.
Right.
And then we'll talk about it.
Yeah. We had similar ones where we were like, hey, someone on the team has to have production experience with it. And you have to have a clear thing that the new thing it has to be better than an existing technology. You can't be like, hey, I hate Rabbit, so we're going to switch to Kafka. Nope. Immediate fail. You got to tell me this is why I need Kafka instead of Rabbit, right? That kind of stuff in order to justify yourself, right? There's a little bit of friction, which is great. Yeah.
I actually wonder if those constraints are actually more difficult at a larger company than it is at a small one, right?
Yeah.
Because you end up with a little bit of the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, I think. This is theories. Again, my own career is smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought because there's competing forces there. If you're like in the ops perspective, hey, you better have a really good reason because if I stand it up for you, I have to support it forever. Right. And so you have this friction of it's hard to get new pieces in. On the flip side, and you're a part of this big org and I'm off in my little corner, I can do some weird stuff because no one's really going to know about it for a while. And just, as long as it's in the box, no one really cares. And maybe I'm like gone in 6 months and it's not my problem anymore. And so you end up with some rogue things. I think that's where that shadow IT, shadow software development comes in, right? Where the mainline path is hard to build in because it's rigid. And so you end up doing some other stuff. And it causes both. Everything's a trade-off, but right. You get some good things, but you get some pain with it.
And then interestingly, this going back to the like political capital sort of talk, right? Like in that scenario, sometimes the leader that can in that like difficult to make progress org can go rogue a little bit and do something weird, and suddenly you get a burst of progress because it's new stuff and you're outside the paradigm, and so you can actually earn political capital. In that sort of environment by breaking the rules slightly.
Right? And
then they get promoted and leave behind a mess.
Exactly. Because you don't tell anyone you broke the rules. You're just like, look at all this really great stuff I was able to build. Yes.
Yeah.
Marketing yourself is a bigger
yeah.
deal than I ever realized before.
Oh.
That's a big company thing also, where the ability
Yeah.
to get to others to see what it is you did, why it's important, all of those kinds of things are critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Even at small companies, like, again, we're talking about marketing to engineers at this
Yeah.
point, right? But
Yeah.
some of this is I worked in MarTech for 5 years, but like that bit, being able to explain what you do to the rest of the business is super helpful in lots of ways.
Yeah.
Right. Being able to, like we talked about earlier, connect it to the business outcomes, right? Connect it to a customer, connect it to like a sale, connect it to, like, one of my favorite things was like, because in any software engineering org, you have like maintenance and security stuff you have to do all the time, right? You have to go and update stuff. And so it's sometimes difficult in engineering orgs to carve out time for that. Some of that is you're a professional, find time.
Yes.
But the other bit is like when you figure out how to sell it to the business as, hey, you wanted to get SOC 2 Type 2 so you could go close more deals. In order for us to keep that, we have to update stuff, right?
There's a tax with that. Yes.
Yeah. So that being skilled over time at like how to communicate over to the business in terms that they understand. Also, again, it builds that relationship over time, which I found that gives engineering orgs the ability to then go tackle technical debt and do a bunch of other stuff because you can explain it better. And you've built up enough capital that like you can go and do some fairly, I don't know, engineering neckbeardy things.
Yes.
If you want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've been saying probably more frequently than I ever have in the past is your job is not actually to write software. Your job is to provide value, and your ability to convey the value is as important as the software that you write, right? And so if you can make that mental switch, I think that also helps with the AI portion. If all of your value comes in writing software and now you have something that writes software, you could squint, it's as good, right? But it's definitely faster. Then you have this existential crisis. But if you've been about providing value for the customer and it's usually through software, then you're like opening up a whole new gateway. I mean, there are other ramifications, don't get me wrong, but understanding what you're getting paid to do is critical, and it drives these other things. Yeah. And allows you to have the freedom to later come back and do the neckbeard stuff that most engineers want to go do. Yeah.
That was actually one of the things I would try and hire for lots of times, are like people that were interested in like customers, right? And interesting in like actually delivering value and things like that. Because I could always, some of this is like, I used to teach at a coding boot camp, right?
Yeah.
So I knew I could teach them the code, right? Yeah. I'll teach that to you when you get here. It's fine. Yeah. Like, as long as you care, like, we can make all this work. It's great. And in AI land, like I think I've said this multiple times, like it's been my theory that writing code has always been the easy part of this job, right? It's been the thing you have to do to deliver value, but like it's the typey like part, right? Yep. It's all AI today does is it accelerates that. It takes what was already the base, relatively easy, relatively commodity part of the job and just makes it even easier, makes it even more commodity, right? It's, yes, code quality matters, but only to a point. And it's like, it is rapidly reaching the point where it crosses that threshold, right? Where it's, it's good enough.
I think it's good enough most of the time, right? And the value, like, I think as the person brings value when you're able to like sniff out the times when it's not, which is, I think, really hard to do.
And that's the interesting, like, for early career folks. This is, if I put on another hat, I'm also the board president at Indie Hackers, which is a social and advocacy organization for software engineers here in Indianapolis. One of the things we're worried about there and trying to make better is like early career software engineers are like, it's very difficult to find employers for a lot of those folks compared to the old days, right? And the thing is, what you're describing requires experience, right? You have to have, like, frankly, I used to say like the difference between a junior engineer and a senior engineer is how many bugs you've fixed, right?
Or maybe even how many bugs you created, but that's a whole,
how many bugs you created, But it's like, you don't get to make those mistakes unless you're like doing it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so how do we get it so that companies hire juniors? Because like you and I we're getting a little old. Like your
Yeah.
kids are probably out of the house at this point.
Yeah.
Mine are both in high school. Like just as an indication of ages here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Like we're not going to be doing this forever. And we have to bring
I think
the
about
next
that a lot.
generation through.
How do you build a team with long-term sustainability where you have, we used to kind of have, oh, I want 3 seniors to 4 mids to 2, that some kind of ratio because of all cost value.
Yeah.
I think the easiest place to get super high value engineers is at the low end of the market because they're cheap, right? Like if you find one who's 50% more productive than a normal, then you got some real gold there. And if you can find that and shape it, but it's just so much harder now because the experience is it's hard to come by, and it's it's a different way of spotting when that stuff matters than maybe it used to.
Yeah. And I keep waiting. My theory is at some point in the next year or two, some company or companies will realize there is a glut of junior talent available that is actually really skilled, right? That in the old days would have been snapped up immediately, right? That if some company can build the infrastructure to be able to support that person, you can get a tremendous amount of value out of them, right? Again, putting on business hat for them. It's almost like arbitrage of like, you know, it's like you've got undervalued talent in the market that if you can build the infrastructure to be able to support them, you as a business can get really far. And because you're going to be giving them their first job or their first opportunity, if you can build a good environment, you can actually grow your own senior engineers that you'll probably still be paying under market by the time they get to that point. Right.
Yeah.
So somebody will realize this. I can't be the only one that's looking at this.
Right. I also think there's a good chance in the next year or two, like school cycle, there's going to be programs that are AI coding native that they'll have skills that an on the job is slower to uptake. I mean, we're probably much closer to the leading edge of AI usage, but there's a lot of places where the marketing department uses it more than the software engineering department. And so you're going to need people who are willing to try and fail, who have experiences through school, who do that, who can jump in an environment and accelerate your existing workflow because they understand the tool better than the other people. Because there'll be people who are like, I've never written software in an artisan way. I've only ever talked to the machine to do it. And so I think there's a whole new value chain coming too.
Oh yeah. Well, it reminds me a little bit. I don't think it's quite the same, but again, I'm old. I remember I was working at the Indianapolis Star a long time ago. We were hiring, right? So we had people coming in. And one of my favorite questions to ask them back in the day was like, what do you actually write your code in? And then if they said like Dreamweaver, I'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Good
questions
luck.
for me?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I don't think AI will get to that point because I think kind of like we're talking about here, like it is a tool that if you use it, it can be an accelerant of everything else that you're doing. But you have to be able to do that other sort of work to be able to explain why this work actually matters. If you can do that, however you did it doesn't actually matter all that much.
Quality aspect is a new vector for importance where sometimes you get where I'm just writing code and I kind of test it, but I'm pushing it because our QA team is going to handle that. So I just keep pushing. And now we're like, well, you need to be thinking less about the actual software you're writing and more about, again, the value, the quality, the reusability of the things you're doing. And you need to be able to drive to, not everyone knows how to test their own software. It is a
everybody
surprise.
will need to soon.
Yes, I agree. I think the mantra for quite some time has sort of been that shift quality left, right? Take your quality and move it out of the gate and into the process throughout. And I think it just becomes more and more important because if you're just a developer, all you do is write software, those jobs are going to be harder and harder to come by. And so you need the whole engineering suite there.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think like the total number of engineering jobs won't go down. I think we're in a little bit of a dip or correction, right? Where folks don't know what to do yet, and they're still figuring it out, right? I don't think the overall population of software engineering jobs will actually dip.
Yeah.
Right? Long term. But the job is going to change, right? It's the arguing over syntax in pull requests days is probably over.
I
right?
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. I'm not complaining about that too much.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, and that is always like stuff that like the machines are good at anyway, right?
Yes.
That's funny.
That's been my dynamic versus static type language all along is why do I have to make it all pretty for the compiler? I'm going to write it for me and the computer can figure it out. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And it's just getting even more that way now.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Thanks so much for talking to me today. All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
That was Matt Brown, incoming CTO of Opendate. 3 things stuck with me from this conversation. Your influence shrinks as the org grows. So the skill that travels with you is connecting engineering work to business outcomes. That's how you earn the capital to do anything at all. Constraints aren't limits. They're a creative tool. Put a 2-week deadline on something and you suddenly find out which features were never must-haves to begin with. And as AI turns writing code into a commodity, the value moves to judgment, knowing when the machine's output isn't actually good enough. If this was useful, follow the hallway track wherever you're listening so the next one shows up. I also write a weekly newsletter called Expedite over at getaxiomatic.com. More of this kind of thing on a fairly regular cadence. And if you run a small independent music venue, go look up Opendate. Matt's joining a sharp team solving a real problem here in Indianapolis. Thanks, Matt. See you next time.